Granny's Tater Pie by Ginger Brantley Bryan. In loving memory of Evie Lee Brantley, 1912 to 2010, dedicated to Curtis Leon Brantley, in honor of being the best dad 3 little girly girls could ever have. This is a story based on real conversations that spanned over many years between my grandmother and me. The setting and stories are true, but I've taken liberties with the time frame for the sake of sharing this story with young children. My grandmother was short in stature, at 4'9", but she was a mighty little lady with an impact on many generations who loved her dearly. Most of her kids would come and visit her on Sunday afternoons, and I remember many Sunday mornings when my dad would wake up early to go have a cup of coffee with her before attending church. With her 6th grade education, she was very proud of all her grandchildren who went on to attend college, many achieving master's degrees, a couple of doctoral degrees, and quite a few owning and operating their own successful businesses. May we all continue to share her legacy of hard work, love, faith, family, and commitment to things that truly matter. At the intersection of 2 country roads in Lenox, Alabama, population 300, including the nearby town of Repton, across from the local community house where people have gathered and socialized for years, I dropped by for a visit to see my grandmother. I sat down next to my favorite octogenarian in the house where my dad spent most of his childhood to see what she filled her days and time with. In her cozy recliner, she sat primly with her perfectly coiffed bun and smooth, milky white skin, softened from years of oil of Olay lotion, rubbed religiously as part of her nightly routine. "Granny B," I inquire, "what have you been up to lately?" "Oh, Ginger, I'm just piecing me together a little quilt top," stitching while she talks. "What style are you making this time?" "Oh, just another star. That's my favorite kind to make. I've made a double wedding ring and a few others, but I just like this one," she says with a smile. "Well, Granny B, while you're sewing, can you tell me a story of when you were young? Where did you go to school?" "Well, I just went to the old one-room schoolhouse over yonder. Why, I went to the 6th grade 3 times, she replied with a twinkle in her eyes, knowing this would pique my curiosity. "What'd you do that for, Grandma? Was school hard for you?" With a chuckle and a shake of her head, Granny replied, "Well, it only went to the 6th grade, so I went 3 times until finally they told me I was too old to come back any more." "Well, Granny B, it looks like you still enjoy reading a lot. You have tons of books on this bookshelf." "I read me a book here and there," she replied. "I like Billy Graham and Corrie ten Boom. Them are some pretty good books." "Did you ever pick cotton, Granny B? I've heard lots of people around here say they used to do that." "Lord have mercy, yes," Granny replied with a wry grin. "I picked many a sack of cotton. In fact, I used to take your daddy with me to pick cotton when he was about 5 years old. He had his own little sack. We worked all day long, and I could pick about 200 pounds. They paid me $1 for a whole day's work. Then I'd come home and make some peas and cornbread or biscuits for dinner for the rest of my young'uns." "I thought only black people picked cotton, Grandma." "Well, child, they did too. We all did. Everybody around here was all poor as church mice, and we didn't know the difference. So we just worked hard at whatever we could find to do. We learned to save money for a rainy day, too. I always had me a little put back in the crib for emergencies." "What's a crib again?" Granny paused and said, "It's just a place to keep things that are valuable, you know, in case you need it. I always have a little something in case I need it." "Wasn't there a story about a toothbrush tree, Granny?" Granny chuckled and replied, "Well, yes, there was a toothbrush tree. Back when your daddy was a little boy, we did work hard in them cotton fields, but there still wasn't much money. We didn't have money to buy toothbrushes from the store, but we had an old tree in the yard that worked great for that, up by the old Brantley place. We'd go cut a piece off the tree and frazzle it so we could brush our teeth with some sody." "What in the world is sody, Grandma?" "You know, them powders that you just use a pinch of for baking." "Oh, baking soda," I said with a laugh. "Granny B, Mom told me there was something about your hearing aid." Looking down at her quilt, Granny pursed her lips and replied, "Well, I didn't think anybody needed to hear that story, but if your mama done told you a little bit, I guess I could finish it." "What happened, Grandma?" I queried. Laughing, she said, "Well, your mama brought me some of those little pretzel snacks. You know, the ones that have a little dab of peanut butter stuck right in the middle. I like to have them when I got a hankering for a little something to eat, and I keep a few right here in my recliner. But the other day, I had a handful of them, and somebody come to the door and was knocking. I didn't know what to do with my pretzels, and I had to grab my brand new hearing aids so I'd be ready to listen when people came in. I tossed the handful of pretzels in my mouth, and I tossed the hearing aid in right with it. With a good belly laugh, I asked, "Oh no, Grandma, you didn't notice?" Well, them was some mighty crunchy pretzels. That doctor was so nice when I told him the story, he didn't even make me finish paying for that there hearing aid since I didn't really get to use it much at all. So, Grandma, will you tell me that story of the mouse you caught again? With a smile, Grandma said, "Well, that story is proof that the good Lord answers prayer, and you better be careful what you pray for. The other day when Earlene was helping me clean the house, we noticed there was some mouse droppings. I can't abide no dirty house, and I decided I was going to talk to the Lord about that mouse. So I prayed and asked the Lord to help me catch him." "Did he, Grandma?" "Girl, he sure did answer my prayer, but not the way I expected. That night, I went to bed, and in the middle of the night, I felt something scurry right across my face. I reached up my arm and grabbed that little mouse right by the tail. Howling with laughter, I said, "You didn't!" With her own belly laugh, Granny replied, "I sure did, and I'm going to be a little bit more specific when I ask the Lord for something next time." Pausing to look at the star quilt top forming under Grandma's capable and disciplined fingers, I considered the energy and time she put into these beautiful works of art that she shared with so many of her children and grandchildren. "Granny, what do you like to do when you're not quilting?" Granny reflected a moment and quietly said, "Well, I stuck a tater pie in the oven when I saw you drive up to visit." "Oh my, that sounds delicious, Granny B, but how did you have time to make a sweet potato pie today?" "Girl, I didn't make no pies today, but I only made about 70 pies this year and put them in the deep freeze. I'm slowing down a little bit, 'cause I usually make me 100 or so. Why, last year I made 30 in one day. I like to have a pie to slip in the oven and have a warm sweet potato pie when I get some company." "Well, Granny, how about a slice of that pie and a cup of your coffee? Now that sounds like a good idea." Potato pie. 3 cups mashed potatoes, 2 sticks margarine or butter, 4 eggs, 2½ cups of sugar, 6 tablespoons of flour, 2 tablespoons of vanilla, 2 tablespoons of lemon flavoring or lemon juice, 1 large can cream-like pet milk. Cream all this together. Beat with electric mixer. Pour in unbaked crusts. Bake about 300 degrees until firm. You will think you got pancake batter, but oh, how good. Here's a good one. Pea picking cake. 1 box cake mix, 1 can small oranges with juice, 4 eggs, half a cup of oil. Mix all this. Filling: 1 Cool Whip, 1 large can of crushed pineapple with juice, 1 large vanilla instant pudding. Mix this and put on cool cake. Egg pie. 1½ to 1 3/4 cups of milk, half a stick of margarine, 3/4 cups of sugar, 3 tablespoons of flour, 1 tablespoon of lemon flavoring, 3 or 4 egg yolks. Cook all this on top of the stove until thick. Pour in cooked pie shell and top with egg meringue. Can't spell. You can add chocolate to this or coconut and use the same recipe. I'm going to send you some recipes every time I write you. I love you all. Don't get fat on all this like I have. Ha, Grandma B.